Hi, I'm Dina, and this is Dina's Journal, podcast style. Welcome. Thank you for joining me. If you're listening to this, that is great. Thank you very much for joining me. And if you're watching on YouTube and listening, also thank you for joining. So Dina's Journal is actually my very first channel that I opened in around August. But I wanted to do a podcast style as well because I wanted to share a few things with people and whoever's listening. And I'm hoping that more people will join in the future. But this is a space where I talk about life as it's happening, the changes, the quiet in between moments, and mainly the things that I want to remember. And in this first episode, I want to share why I started this journal in the first place and what it means for me to continue doing this. Hopefully, with the idea that someone will listen to this and not necessarily, open a channel if that's what they want, that's great. But just to give you that space to think about the changes in your life and to think about how you can navigate those with graciousness and hope and laughter and moving forward. So let's start. So I didn't start this channel because I had this big plan or a clear vision of what it was exactly that I wanted to do. I started it because I reached a point in my life where there was a lot of changes happening at the same time, and I needed a space that I felt grounding and real and comfortable. And this channel is kind of my way of documenting that chapter in my life while I'm living in it, not after everything is figured out. So in this episode specifically, I want to talk about why I started Dina's Journal and why it felt so important for me to begin, even when it felt uncomfortable, because every time you start something new, it will be uncomfortable. So this is kind of the idea of this first episode. And as we go on, hopefully with more episodes, this podcast style will be about that, about starting new things and doing uncomfortable things and everything happening in life and how we navigate through it. So let's get into it. So the first reason I started this channel is because I was going through a season where a lot of things were changing. And I do like to see life, or my life, as seasons. Every time I'm going through a change is a different season. And I look at it that way because I think it's important to separate the way we look at things and not kind of mush it all together or put it all into a perspective of, I'm going through a lot of changes and that's how it's going to be. No, this is just one part of your life or my life. And nothing dramatic happened, so to say, and my life didn't fall apart, but it also wasn't the same anymore. So I was starting over in small but meaningful ways. A lot at once was happening, and some of those changes I'm going to talk about as we go on in this podcast. But one big thing was actually I started my school. I went back to school. And this isn't just, at least for me, it wasn't just like, oh, I'm going back to school. I started my PhD journey. And this is a huge step for someone who was in the workforce. was in the corporate world, let's say that. And, going back to school was and making that decision and doing a PhD for me was a change for a lot of reasons. But because of that change, I started looking at things differently. Why am I making that change? And why did I want to make that shift in my life? So I think we don't talk enough about those transitions, which some of them can be quiet. The ones where, like I said, you're not broken, but you're also not the person that you used to be anymore. Like, I had a life where I was this corporate person and, 9 to 5 job, although it was a remote job and it had its flexibility. But that's not who I am anymore. And now I need to get used to or start accepting the person that I am becoming. And I'm not saying this just because I did it and, for my sake, but I wanted to share this with people who are listening or who are watching, because maybe you're going through something similar, or maybe you're going through a change and you are thinking about that transition. You are thinking about who you were and who you want to become and who you are right now. And perhaps that feeling is still lingering, that feeling of like, oh, I used to do this, I used to do that, and I'm not doing it anymore. I'm doing something different. Well, let's talk about it. So that's when I started thinking about, okay, who do I want to become? Actually, that's where my creativity came out. I think I had this burst of energy, so to speak, that I wanted to create and I wanted to show it. And this is where my journal comes in, my channel, because in other words, food became a big part of this transition. I always loved cooking, but this way it felt different because I didn't want to just cook for myself or for people around me. I also wanted to share and show that there are ways that you can make food that make you feel wholesome, make you feel good, fulfilled. And not just food, but like other, showing other creative parts of me to the world, to the people that know me or don't know me quite yet. And it became, and creating food and filming it and showing it and teaching some people how to do something in terms of food and coffee and bakes, and it became really grounding for me during this transition. And I was experimenting, and I still am. I was experimenting and cooking and creating, and this gave me a sense of routine and comfort when other parts of me were still shifting, were still transitioning. So sharing food, it felt easy, it felt honest, it felt something that I could share with you without needing to explain everything, right? I would just set up my camera, do what I do, right? And then share it with you all. So this channel really became a place where I could let things evolve naturally without the pressure, just showing up, creating through change. And that was the biggest part of why I decided to start this back in August. But there are a few other reasons, and these may be a little more personal, so to say, but I also want to share this because I have a feeling that I'm not the only one, maybe. So the second reason I started this journal is something that I've noticed more and more as I get older. And I've realized that a lot of my memories feel locked away. And I don't know if a lot of people experience this, but for example, big life changes, entire chapters of my life that I go through sometimes, I can't always remember how they felt. because everything moves so fast, especially if you're here in the United States. And honestly, it sometimes scares me how easily those moments can disappear. And I don't want to just remember my life through milestones or like a picture that I took, but I want to remember who I was becoming during these moments, and filming is part of that. I can film something, and when you're filming content, you go through these like multiple videos that you then put together and edit, and even that process of editing, it it brings you back to those moments that you went through at that time, and not just the cooking part, but also what you were experiencing through that time that you were filming, or that month or that week. And that is kind of like a reminder of those feelings and those moments. And I think this channel is kind of a journal that I can come back to, something I can watch over the years from now and say, that was me. That's how I felt at that moment. And I think a lot of us, whenever we go through, you know, maybe something challenging or something that we want to forget, somehow we don't forget, right? Sometimes we like, it's stuck with us. It's a memory, but it's something not as pleasant. So, but that doesn't really happen a lot with good memories. I have a feeling sometimes that's what happens. Maybe not always, but it happens with me, and I want to be able to remember those good parts of my life as well. Documenting this, as I said, this time of change, this time of transition. And I do want to remember everything, and perhaps even make it a story like I am doing right now. And it's hard because I think a lot of us are also busy surviving or pushing forward, and we forget to witness our own lives. And that's very important to kind of bring through to you guys, is we forget to stop and think and remember those moments that made us who we are, right? If this is a chapter or a season, as I'd like to say, of reinventing myself and transitioning and thinking about what's next, I want to remember it. I want to remember what I went through to become who I am, and to become who I think I want to be, right? And this is it. This is how I find the way of doing it. Maybe for you is something else, something different. Maybe it's writing it. That's another journal. Maybe it's talking to your family or your friends or whatnot. But this is how I want to do it, and it feels really good. And with that said, I also want to bring you to my third reason, and maybe closing this short podcast. And it's probably the hardest one to admit. I am now in my late 20s, and lately I've been thinking a lot about reinvention, as I mentioned earlier, about who I want to become and what kind of life I want to build going forward. And getting in front of the camera, like I am right now, for those of you who are watching, was a huge insecurity for me. I was uncomfortable, self-conscious, and honestly scared of being seen in this kind of intimate way, right? Of showing my face and showing where the places of in my kitchen, in my house, and that felt very scary. But then I realized, if I keep wanting to feel confident, I'll never try anything new. So this wasn't about being fearless, but it was about not letting fear decide for me anymore. So let that sink in, right? And I welcome fear. I think fear is wonderful in a way because I don't think we should look at fear as if it's stopping us, or if it's something that, you know, is blocking our way. I think we should let fear walk beside us, because in a way it's motivational. You know, having these kind of fears, and not just, you know, being in front of the camera, or any fear in life, right? If you know, getting a new job, you're afraid to step out of your comfort zone, to move to a new state, new country, connect with people you haven't connected in a while. Though any kind of fear that you're feeling, I think you need to embrace it, or at least I want to embrace it and walk beside it, because that's the only way I see moving forward. There's no shame to have a fear. There's no shame to have that feeling of, you know, oh, I'm scared of doing this. That's okay. But I think it's important to see that through and move forward. And this channel is part of me stepping out of my comfort zone, trying something new, and allowing myself to be a beginner again. There's no shame in that. Starting something new like this, starting my school journey again. I think being a beginner in a lot of things is a way of challenging yourself. And even if you are in your late 20s or early 20s or early 30s or late 30s, whatever age you are, I think that's wonderful. And I think a lot of us want change, but we underestimate how uncomfortable growth can feel. And it's a feeling that doesn't go away. You know, I'm still conscious, you know, but I am showing up, and I am doing it. And starting this podcast is another beginner step, is another way of me just coming here and doing this. And maybe it won't be the best version, you know, and now I'm speaking, you know, I don't have this script, or I don't have this like big idea of exactly what I want to do, but I had this feeling that I wanted to try this, and I wanted to come out here and do this with you guys. And that's why I came on here and I shared with you some of my thoughts as to why I started this channel and why I'd like to continue. Because Dina's journal is not about having everything figured out. It's about showing up while I'm still learning with you. Every time I make a recipe, every time I create something, I'm still learning. I'm still, you know, figuring it out as I go. And I think that's the beauty of creating in general. But I look at creating as something that I don't have to have all the facts. I don't have to have it figured out. So if you are in a season of change, or if you feel like you're quietly starting over your life, I hope you feel less alone here. This is just the beginning. And for you who are watching and listening, thank you. And I'm really glad you're here for it. Thank you for listening, and I'll see you in the next episode. Cheers. Wow, that was 22 minutes. Oh my gosh. All right. Next episode is going to be something new. I don't know yet. We'll figure it out. And that's what this is about. Bye.